about 1,400 years ago, there was using creative imagination, there was a legal case that was brought before the rabbis at the time, and the case involved a two-headed child. It was a very unusual case, and the question that was asked, in terms of inheritance, when the parents die, is a two-headed child one being or two beings?
Right.
Now, they, using their creative imagination, they said, well, what would King Solomon do?
All right.
And King Solomon, they said, would have put a sack on the head of one of the children and then taken freezing cold water and poured it on the head of the other one. Now, once it was poured on the head of the one child, that child would sure cry out in pain. And if the other child cried out in pain, then it was one person.
That's right.
But if both of one did and the other did it, then for the sake, it was two persons. Now, I have to tell you, what was that really about? It was really about trying to say that we are one body. We are one body. When an elderly woman living in Greenville, North Carolina, cannot get medical care,
That's right.
okay, and she's hurting, I'm hurting.
That's right.
Okay? When a sick, middle-aged person cannot get their health care in Durham, North Carolina because of the lack of Medicaid expansion and has to wait to the point at which they're at death's doorstep, they're hurting and I'm hurting. We're one body.
Oh, yes, sir.
And
One body.
when a child has a mother who says, do I provide food? Do I heat my house? Do I pay my rent?
Yeah.
Or do I get preventative health care for my child, which I really can't afford? When she has to make a decision like that, folks, she's hurt.
That's right.
And because we in North Carolina are all one body,
Teach.
we are all hurting.
That's right.
We are all hurting. You know, religions don't often agree. But in this case, in Jewish tradition, one of our greatest philosophers 1,000 years ago said there's 10 things that a community has to provide, and at the top of that list was health care access.
All right.
1,000 years ago, Moses Maimonides, 1,000 years ago, a physician and a rabbi. You're going to hear from Reverend George Reed, representing Protestant, primarily Protestant tradition, about the perspective that the Protestant tradition has on the necessity, in this case, of accepting the Medicaid expansion.
That's right.
And I have with me copies for the press, if you need them, of the statement of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops that have called upon every state which has not accepted the Medicaid expansion to do so. I have copies of this statement from them, and afterwards I'll be glad to give it to you, and I hope that you'll take it not only to your station, but to your editors, because wall to wall, Protestant, Catholic, Jew, it's all together. It's all together. Now, I want to say something that is not going to make my friend Reverend Barber happy. Okay? I just want for 2 minutes to leave the moral argument aside.
Go ahead.
And I just want to talk about the economic argument.
Yes, sir.
Now, certainly no bastion of liberal thinking is the Rand Corporation. It's quite conservative, all right? And the Rand Corporation, as well as the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, have done studies of what the economic effect would be of not accepting the Medicaid expansion. And it falls into 3 categories. Number 1, it's a job killer. You heard about the hospital in Greenville that's closing. In Greensboro, we've already lost 450 jobs. Now, the Rand Corporation and UNCG both estimated that if we accept Medicaid expansion next year, that will not only stop this job bleeding, but will add 6,000 jobs to our economy. Now, 6,000 jobs doesn't sound like a lot, except when you consider the fact that thus far this year, we've only added 20,000 new jobs to the North Carolina economy. So 6,000 is quite something.
That's right. That's
The
right.
second thing that the lack of Medicaid expansion will do is it will raise premiums. It's going to throw people who were eligible for Medicaid expansion into the pool of that the rest of us are in, either through private insurance or through the Affordable Health Care Act. And it is estimated by the RAND Corporation, again, this is a conservative think tank, that it will increase in the state of North Carolina and other states insurance premiums for everybody else to the tune of 8 to 10%. And finally, number 3, economically speaking, it's a budget buster. Because according to the RAND Corporation, the 14 states which will not accept Medicaid expansion would have been eligible for $8.4 billion of federal payments, and the states collectively will have to pay another $1 billion out of their own budgets in uncompensated care. So we've got a moral argument, we've got a religious argument, we've got an economic argument, and I have to tell you, again, this is for the press, I brought these studies, including an article by Dr. Andrew Broad of the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, the RAND Corporation studies as well, the summaries of that. But at the end of this, there's also something that I put in, if you'd like to see this, that actually has a list of the following governors who have accepted Medicaid expansion. Jan Brewer of Arizona, Rick Scott of Florida, Rick Snyder in Michigan, Brian Sandoval in Nevada, Chris Christie in New Jersey, Susana Martinez in New Mexico, Jack Dalrymple in North Dakota, John Kasich in Ohio, Tom Corbett in Pennsylvania. All these governors are conservative Republican governors.
That's right.
And in addition to that, I added to this, if you'd like to see, there's statements from each one of them. Each one of more than a dozen Republican governors who've now accepted Medicaid expansion as to why they did it. We want the governor today to look at the statements of his colleagues. How can it be good for Jan Brewer and not for Governor Pat McCrory? How can it be good in Ohio with their Republican governor and not in our state?
Yes, sir.
So, Reverend Barbara, I want to bring it back. I want to bring it back to that moral and religious argument.
You never left.
That's right.
You never left.
It's moral, it's economic, it's religious. I want to bring it back because the bottom line for everybody standing up here is that we all share a faith tradition in which we believe that every single person was created in God's image.
That's right.
And that just doesn't mean me. That means you.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
And when I come across you and I have medical care and you don't,
All right. Go ahead.
I should look at you and say, there goes a divine manifestation, a manifestation of the divine in our world.
Yes.
And that person, as one of God's children, deserves health care.
That's
And
right.
because of that, this state must for economic, moral, and religious and humane reasons accept Medicaid expansion, and we urge you, Governor McCrory, to do so, and to do so quickly.
Yeah, we're going to take some questions in a minute. George, will you come? Nancy, come on up to Pastor Pullen Memorial. And I want to say to the media, you know, Rabbi Goodman and I do a little tongue-in-cheek because we have to teach. I'm not saying y'all don't know, but really there's no separation between moral and economic.
That's right.
That's him teasing me. Economics is ethics. Jesus' first sermon was about economics. He said, preach good news to the poor. Or tokos, Greek word, what it means is those who have been made poor by systems of economic exploitation. And so that's why we don't separate the moral argument from the economic. In fact, what Rabbi has just done is deepened the moral argument. He's actually deepened it for us. And by the way, John, the governor in Michigan, what's his name? Snyder. I want the media to get this. In Michigan, there's a Republican-led Senate, Republican-led House, and a Republican governor, and they accepted Medicaid.
That's right. That's
I want you to hear that what we're seeing in North Carolina is not Republicanism, we're seeing extremism.
That's right.
That's right.
No other state has denied unemployment like this state. We're not seeing Republicans. I know Republicans. My granddad was a Republican.
All right.
And a lot of my other family members, because that back in the day, that's what most African Americans were.
That's right.
Martin Luther King Sr. was a Republican.
That's right.
So come on, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, but this crowd is engaging in a kind of extremism. This is something else,
That's right.
and it doesn't meet the smell test. You know, when you drop the plumb line of justice,
Yeah.
the plumb line of morality, the plumb line of economics, this state is leaning in a very extreme way, and it's time for us to straighten up. If I was my grandma, I'd say, and fly right.
All right. Go ahead.
George Reed.